within the Catholic Church, amongst actual Orthodox believing Catholics, we have this divide. It's a fact, it's just there. We have on the one hand what we'd call the sort of conservative Catholics, which is folks who are definitely doing everything they can to follow all of the teachings of the church, to be faithful to the catechism and so on and so forth. On the other hand, we have traditional Catholics who are trying to do everything they can to follow the teachings of the church, but at the same time have embraced the traditional norms of piety and often will point out the defects in the way that the liturgy's been changed and the way that the piety's been changed, and sort of say that the real way forward is probably the traditional way instead of the conservative way, which is Orthodox, but accepts sort of the novelties in the church in the last 50 years. I hope that's a decent explanation. Now, a lot of conservative Catholics end up becoming traditionalists. I myself would have called myself a conservative Catholic. And the reason is because you keep reading and you keep trying to find out more about the church's history, about her liturgy, and so on and so forth. You start reading these great saints, these great church fathers, and you go, the Mass that they're talking about is nothing like the one I'm going to. And they're speaking in a way that's just kind of different than the way that Catholics are speaking today. Matt Fradd and Scott Hahn seem to have sort of found that traditional path, which is wonderful. But another point of contention between what we would call the traditional position and the conservative position is, in my opinion, the view of the papacy. Because traditional Catholics, ultimately, when we look at what's happened in the church in the last 50 years or so, there were a lot of unfortunate things that have taken place on behalf of Pope John Paul II, Pope Paul VI, John the 23rd, even Pope Benedict, and of course right now Pope Francis. This is not me trying to beat up on the Pope or, say a bunch of negative things. It's just a fact. So for a lot of folks who find traditional Catholicism, they go as far as finding the liturgy, the piety, and so forth. But there's this sort of John Paul II worship that is really hard for people to look through. And what I mean by that is John Paul II is just this magnificent figure who was amazing and did everything he could. And sadly, in spite of his efforts, or despite his efforts, there's been chaos in the church, but we can't really say it's his fault. That's kind of the conservative Catholic, traditional leaning view of John Paul II. Whereas traditional Catholics would say, no, John Paul II, okay, you've canonized him, but he's definitely not the saint that I'm going to be putting on my wall. Let's put it that way. Especially for what he did with the Society of St. Pius X, which is a whole other conversation. And